Sylvia Massy is a producer, mixer, recording engineer, and author who has worked with everyone from Tool to Johnny Cash. In addition to hosting a Mix with the Masters workshop at AES 2019, Sylvia was part of a panel discussion with other women on their experiences working with Prince, hosted by the Women's Audio Mission. She made time to come sit down with us at Sear Sound to talk about her studio in Ashland, Oregon, current work, mentors, mixing, and of course, a few Prince stories.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And are you here specifically for AES?
I am. I was actually invited by the Women's Audio Mission to come out and do a panel with them that I did earlier this year about Prince, working with Prince, because I worked with Prince for 3 years, and there's 3 other women, and we all sit on a panel and talk about our experiences working with Prince.
Susan Rogers.
Susan Rogers and Peggy Noonan.
Right.
Yeah.
Great.
We've had Susan, So it's a panel on your experiences with Prince.
Yeah, right. It's a fun conversation. We all each have our own perspective because we worked with Prince during different eras. Like Peggy worked at the very beginning, and then Susan did Purple Rain, and then I worked with him around at the time of Diamonds and Pearls. And
but different. So as he changed, the studio experiences were different. He was different in the studio.
Absolutely. Apparently, I had the raciest of all the stories because he.
Wow.
Yeah, I have a lot of good stories about Prince. Yeah. Yeah. It was fun. No, I can't say it was fun. It wasn't fun.
Was it high pressure?
High pressure.
Yeah,
and
it must have been.
He was not very nice, to be honest. It was demanding, but he did reward you with the hard work that you did.
Right.
In other ways.
Right.
Not personal praise.
Right.
Because it was not his nature.
So from a day-to-day session, you would not feel like you didn't know if it was going well, or
you never knew if it was going well, and you would only guess. You were waiting a lot of time just for him to show up, and there was no communication between him and any of his staff.
So there's a lot of sitting around.
A lot of sitting around. Everyone's wondering what the hell's going on.
That only adds to nerves.
Yeah,
right?
and then these are very late days too. So you wind up it's 3:00 in the morning, and finally the manager calls you and says, "Yeah, you can go home now. Prince is in Paris." So, yeah. So, yeah.
We just realized Prince is in Paris.
Yeah. But you know what? It was these times I'll never forget because there were sessions when it was him and me in the studio together, and he was playing all the instruments. He would turn around and grab a guitar, and I would have it in record, and he would play solos effortlessly, spinning on his heels. Dancing, and it's me and him, and it's like having my own private Prince show.
And we're talking analog, right?
Oh, yeah.
On tape.
Yeah.
Great.
So it was a special time.
And did he sing? He
Never,
sang by himself, right?
He would only sing by himself. So when I was engineering for him, I would set up the room so that after the bed tracks were finished, that he would do the vocals on his own. And he was a fantastic engineer and layered all the backing vocals and harmonies. And
That's amazing.
yeah, he's really something else. And it's a shame that he's gone because but I'll tell you what, there's archives of music that has not been released that could be continually new music coming out by Prince probably for the next 30 years. I mean, there's so much music.
So he just didn't record like, I'm going to make a record. He just recorded and recorded and recorded.
Always recorded.
Right.
And in fact, at the time I was working with him, there were 4 studios that he was going from between.
Paisley Park.
No, I was in L.A. at Larrabee. So there were 2 rooms at Larrabee, and then there were another 2 rooms at the record plant that he had booked, an engineer in each room. And in each room, every day, he would, from beginning to end, write, record all the vocals, mix 2 songs per studio every day from scratch. So 8 songs a day.
Including
for
writing.
20 years, yes. For 20 years.
And he played the drums too.
He would, but when I
machine?
worked with him, it was a lot of drum machine. But he would play the drum machine with one hand without quantization. So the thumb was the kick, and the index was the snare, and the pinky was the hat. And he was playing it live. With the right hand, he would be playing the bass line on a keyboard. Unbelievable. So
And you were just
I got
there.
I got to witness
Yeah.
that. But yeah, it was not an easy job. And the other engineers would say the same.
Yeah, we talked to Susan for a while last year, and she pointed out a lot of interesting things. That I've heard so much about him now over the years since he's passed away that you kind of realize he was just so above everybody else in a way, right?
He seemed to be superhuman almost,
Right.
but
Even his
apparently
energy,
he was
right.
mortal after all.
Right.
Yeah.
But Lisa Chambliss is the fourth of the four women who will be speaking on these panels, and she worked with him in the very last part when he was at Paisley Park, and she has a different perspective too. He became, quote, religious, and there was a whole different vibe. So there's different, and you can recognize it in his music too, I think. Yeah.
Would he let people be involved in mixing?
Yeah, I mixed several tracks.
You did?
Yeah. But the hits that you hear, like on the album Diamonds and Pearls, some of that was done by Keith Cohen. Keith Cohen mixed a lot, and I was Keith's assistant. So sometimes I would be assisting Keith, and other times I would be engineering for Prince. I kind of took different roles, and sometimes Prince would have me mix things too.
Would he be present for the mix, or you'd mix and
I'd
send
mix.
it to him?
Well, there wasn't any sending because
Right.
we were mixing two cassettes,
Right.
basically, just for
Right.
reference, and then to half-inch after that,
Right.
ATR. But I have a couple of funny stories about all that.
Let's hear.
Okay, so let's see. So there was one time when we were doing the Diamonds and Pearls record, and I was assisting for Keith Cohen mixing the song Get Off. And now Prince was so prolific that he would finish an album, the album would be mastered, but the label would say, we're not releasing it because you just put out an album 4 months ago. We don't want to compete against that. So give it a chance. Well, he couldn't wait, so he was constantly updating the album that was finished with new songs because he couldn't help himself. So he wrote the song Get Off, and I didn't like that song. Personally, I thought the record was brilliant and it should just stay the same, but he wanted to take off some songs and replace with these new songs, and Get Off was one of them. So I'm sitting in the back of the room while Keith Cohen's mixing, and my job is to patch cables or whatever is needed, and Prince is in the room. And so I sit in the back of the room when I'm assisting, and I bring out my journal and I jot down a few things in my journal. And I think that day I really didn't like that song, and I can't express that. I would never say that to Prince. But in my journal, I can say whatever I want. So I'm like, there's Prince sitting on his purple throne, and he's taking a perfectly good record, and he's ruining it with this song, Get Off. It's not a good song. And I'm just venting onto the page.
Spoken like a true producer, by the way.
Yeah, right. In private, though. Yes. So, and then Keith says, hey, can you patch in this thing? So I put the book down and go over to the patch bay, and then I hear Prince saying out loud, there's Prince sitting on his purple. Yeah. He picked up the book and he started reading it out loud in the room. And I was so terrified. He read the whole passage, and then I grabbed it out of his hand and I thought, oh my God, I'm so fired. But he started laughing.
Right.
And at that point, our relationship changed. He became much nicer.
Right.
And then they ultimately even offered me a job to move to Paisley Park and be on staff, which I turned down.
Really?
Yeah.
Was that
It's
because
a little fucked up reading someone's journal.
Well,
he's Prince.
He's Prince.
Yeah.
Oh, that gives you... Oh.
It'd be fucked up if I read her journal, but Prince reading it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. There's another fun story, though. Do we have time for that?
You do whatever you want.
All right. So I'm mixing. I get to mix some things for Prince, too. He kind of gave me a tape. He says, make a good mix of this. Or he didn't even say make a good mix. He just said, mix this. Okay, so I spend the whole day making this mix, and it's like a kind of a long song, about 7 minutes long, and it's one of those really sexy songs that he was known for, like, oh baby, you know, tonight we're gonna do it, you know, we're gonna do it a lot of times or whatever, however he was singing.
That's pretty sexy.
Yeah, super sexy, but. So I spent all day working on it, and I wanted to get it just perfect. So I kind of had to stop myself at one point, because at one point a mix doesn't get better. Right. It gets worse. So I stopped, and Prince wasn't there yet. And so I just sat down outside the studio, and I waited. And I waited for a couple hours at least before Prince showed up, busting through the front door of the studio with a girl. And he was heading right to the studio, and I was like, oh, good, I get to play it for him, and I follow him in there and go over there and get ready to play it. And he says, no, I got this, you know, thank you. I don't need you. I'm like, okay. So I sit outside the door, and I can hear through the door that he's playing the song. And you know, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, he's going to love this mix. But then I realized, you know, after the mix ended and another 5 minutes went by, I was like, what the hell?
It's a different version?
No, it was the same version, but what are they doing in there?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, sexy song. It's a sexy
Oh,
song.
boy.
So then they come busting out of the door. The hair is all messed up. Clothes are all messed up. And they just walk out the front door. Not a word. Not a word.
Well, I guess the mix
And that was
worked.
Right. It worked. Exactly.
I guess so. And that's the whole
Yeah,
the whole
that's
reason.
amazing.
Yeah.
No, seems like such an intense. Just
So-
every moment is intense,
so he
right?
came-
It's just
Very
crazy.
much.
So he came to LA to work specifically. Did he ever work in New York?
I'm sure he did.
I mean, remember, the vibe with him was he worked everywhere, even when he was on tour.
Right.
He would just, after
Yeah.
the show,
Right.
find a studio.
He
work
couldn't
in-
help himself. He was so
Right,
prolific.
Right.
And was there ever any socializing? Or he just would leave the studio and
He
that
would
be it?
he would go clubbing. Yeah, he would show up, but
But he wouldn't invite people who
no,
he
I was the
working with?
help. You
Right.
know,
Yeah, right.
we were the help, and that's okay. You know, I know.
You know,
My
what you're
role.
there for, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, difficult person to get to know for sure.
So is that pretty much the first part of your career, kind of, because you said you were also assisting, right?
Right.
But then,
Mm-hmm.
at a certain point,
Well, it was at the point when I was asked to move to Paisley Park, and I turned him down because I had just gotten offered the job of producing the Tool record.
fantastic story.
And that's where I had to make a decision. Do I want to produce or do I want to work for Prince, which is the two prestige. Prince is probably more prestigious than working
Right.
with an unknown band.
Right.
They were unknown at the time, but I'd been friends with them and gone to see their shows.
Right. And you chose them.
Yeah, I wanted to.
You made the right
I wanted
choice.
to produce. I think so, but I
Did
don't
that sell
regret.
2 million records on their debut record? Or so? That was their
It was
first
a
record.
couple million, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the Undertow was the first breakthrough for them.
Right.
Yeah,
And that's on
Right.
your
Great band.
producing career. That was
pretty much. I had one other thing before that. It was a band called Green Jello, which was a
I
joke
remember Green
band,
Jello.
right?
Mhm.
They
They were
were
fun.
singing goofy songs about Three Little Pigs and
Yeah,
stuff
they were
like
very
that.
fun.
And so that was really my first one. And in fact, Danny Carey played drums in that band.
he's
so
in
our,
Tool.
Yeah, and,
Yeah.
and since the drums were already set up for Green Jello, we recorded the Tool thing at the same time. The first time we worked together. So yeah,
And that was at Laramie? No, that was at
that one was at Sound City.
Sound City. Oh, okay. So
yeah.
is that on the console, the famous console? the
Yeah,
Neve?
right.
So you spent
And
a lot of time on that console.
I did, and then I eventually got my own Neve from 1972, custom.
80, what's 80?
It's a 8038-ish, but it's really custom. It has 1073 modules. And it looks kind of similar
That's
to
a
the
good
one
too.
here in
That's
Sears
a great
Sound.
sounding console.
Oh, I could imagine.
Yeah.
But I put that one, I had it shipped over from London, and I had it installed into the B room at Sound City. So I spent a lot of time at Sound City.
Great. It's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Are you from LA?
No, you know, from the Midwest.
Oh, really?
Originally in San Francisco area, and then moved down to LA when I realized that really, if you want to do it for real, you got to go to LA.
Yeah.
Not here.
Well, I never really thought that I could do New York, only because it's way more challenging. For I don't know. I think
What is a way of life or the music
maybe,
business?
I don't know. Both. I could have been completely wrong about that.
You're kind of a West Coaster. You said you lived in San Diego. Yeah, that makes sense. That's not like. Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because here you have to deal with the seasons,
right?
And it's just kind of is more difficult here. It seems like it's more dense. At least LA's spread out.
Dense, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, last night, just walking from dinner, I wound up taking the train 2 blocks. I had to go home and
Take
it was
Xanax.
an assault. It was an assault. Times Square.
Yeah.
And were you out last night? Were you here yesterday?
Yeah.
I mean, that rainstorm totally bummed our high.
Wasn't it? Well, I liked it.
You did, really?
Yeah, I was prepared. I had an umbrella with me.
Oh, okay. We weren't prepared. We're not prepared. And I was carrying my bags around for staying at the hotel, so all my shit got wet. Like my bags, my clothes were all.
Yeah, it was a downpour last night.
Yeah.
And it came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so okay, let's go back to.
Yeah, so let's go current.
Okay. do that.
Okay.
That's great.
Let's go current.
Great.
What are you up to?
Well, I finished a mix of the Taylor Hawkins record. He's a drummer from Foo Fighters.
Yeah.
And this record is star-studded with Dave Grohl's all over it on every track. It's kind of a collaboration of those two. And then they had guest artists, Chrissy Hind, Joe Walsh, Nancy Wilson, Perry Farrell, let's see, Leanne Rimes on a track, and Duff is playing bass on some of it.
Oh, nice.
And who else? Wow. Roger Taylor and John Anderson.
Really?
Yeah.
The country John Anderson or the Yes John Anderson?
Yes, John Anderson, yeah. But it's an amazing record. It's such a good, it's like a combination of Foo Fighters meets Queen.
And he sings?
Yeah, Taylor's
He's a really
great.
good singer. He's always had a really
it's so
good
fun.
voice.
It's like Dave leaving the drums, becoming a lead singer, and that's pretty great.
Right.
And did you cut it
Well,
live?
Taylor plays all the drums on his
Right.
record too.
Yeah.
And Dave's playing guitar all over this one. Yeah.
Is it a live record? Like
No, it's quite well produced and dense. It's very dense. A lot of harmonies. Really creative songwriting, fun, and a great sense of humor. It's a enjoyable record to listen to just because every song is great. And
you produced?
I didn't produce. No, I mixed it.
You mixed it.
Where
I
did you
mixed
mix
it on my rig in Ashland, Oregon.
Oh, right. So you were in weed at one point.
Yes, I'm clean out of weed.
How far is Ashland from weed?
It's only 60 miles.
Oh, so you're
It's very
still
close, but
okay.
it's over the California-Oregon state
What,
line.
what inspired that move? Like
A guy.
A guy. I that was a leading question.
No, actually, it's a better place to have a studio.
Right.
But I like the lifestyle of living away from the metropolitan areas as a home base. I do love to travel, and I travel quite a lot. But at home, I have a studio in a church. It's an old converted church with the nave. The same nave that was in Sound City is up there now. And then we're just building a new mix room in an old garage, like a auto shop.
Great.
And it's really fantastic.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, do you expect clients to attend?
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It's a great place if they want to come up for a visit, and
Did
I'll
Taylor
do that.
come?
No, it was all long distance.
Right.
Yeah. It was kind of there was a shootout I had with a couple other mixing engineers, and I won the shootout, so I got the gig. So we haven't met, but I expect that we'll meet each other at some
that's
point.
fantastic.
Yeah.
How do you approach a shootout any different than a normal mix of yours? Like,
Well, luckily I wasn't expecting it to be a shootout. I didn't know it was a
gotcha.
shootout.
Right.
So I just grabbed it and went
with
just
it and-
whatever I thought was good. I wasn't really, when you just take it and find the song in the mess of tracks and then make something out of it. It's however it shapes up is how it turns out, and And the first song was very difficult because it had 100 tracks, and a lot of it was vocals, and a lot of it was a bit disorganized. So I had to put things together.
Was there a rough mix that you had to match? Or
actually, on that song, I ignored the rough mix.
You did.
The rough mix was so rough that I listened to a little bit of it, I put it aside, and then I had to move files into time. A lot of it was out of
really?
time.
Okay.
Yeah, I cut and moved vocal parts so that they matched. Timing was an issue in a lot of it. I dried up the vocals. There was some kind of strange delays that they wanted in the initial mix that I took away, and then I created an intro and an ending. Just kind of out of thin air with just effects.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah,
Cool.
and that's the stuff I love to do. If I get the freedom to do it,
Right.
and I kind of
Right.
just say, well, I don't know if they're going to like it. It doesn't matter.
Right.
Here's how I can contribute to this.
So you're thinking production all the time.
Well, I guess that's what it is.
Yeah, that's great.
And it's challenging to be creative in the digital world when you're mixing. It's when you have microphones and you can bang on things and
Right.
make sounds. It seems to be easier than trying to manipulate existing sounds into
Right.
something new.
Right.
I always find it interesting too. Sometimes I'll do extra stuff on a chorus and send it to a client, and they won't really notice, but they'll like
Right.
how it feels.
Yeah.
Like,
I did that with the Taylor project on one song. I sang a bunch of backing vocals and just kind of slipped that one under the wire. They loved it,
they
stayed.
acknowledged that it was new.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
And they even give me credit for singing
Great.
on the record.
Right.
So
Great.
I'm rubbing elbows with all those stars now. Isn't that great?
Being a tracking engineer, a mix engineer, and a producer, are you happy as doing one thing or another?
I like it all.
Do you like producing, tracking, and mixing your own records? Or if you're producing, would you rather have someone engineer for you?
Oh man, any way around. It's easier if I have an engineer when I'm producing. But even with having an engineer, I usually push him out of the way for
Right.
some things.
Do you so you don't have a set engineer who knows your style?
Oh, I do. Yes,
You do, but
yeah.
you still say,
Yeah,
Let me add it.
his name's Ivan Handwork, and he and I've worked together quite a bit. But to be honest, when I'm working in my own studio, I'm working with headphones because it's an open room. I don't have a control room,
Oh, wow.
and that's the way I prefer to work.
Right.
But I'm so used to the way that the Neve sounds, and that I'm not really depending on what's coming into the headphones, because I know that if I add this much on the 1073 for this instrument, that
What it's going to do.
what it's going to do. So it's pretty consistent what I get out of the initial tracking.
Right.
And the engineer, Ivan, he knows that I'll turn the knobs for that.
yeah, great.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Interesting. Everyone kind of has their own mixing requirements. Some people like certain speakers, desks. What kind of headphones are you working on?
Ooh, well, that's changed. I love the Biodynamic DT770s.
Is that the one with the felt?
The fuzzy, yeah.
And they're comfortable too.
They're very comfortable, and
Yeah.
that's important because I'm
You
wearing
wear
them
Right.
so much in the initial tracking anyway. I have moved over to MixFi Blue headphones,
Oh,
Wow, interesting.
which have an onboard amplifier that you can adjust to boost the level. And those I love to just carry around with me because on my iPhone or whatever, I've got enough juice. But either of those will work. The blues, the clients love the blues though, because they really stick on your head.
Right.
At your new studio, you don't listen to monitors when you're mixing.
Oh yeah. No,
do?
I mean, I've got Genelec 8351As.
Those the big suckers?
They're fairly big. Yeah. No, they call them the ones. There's a whole series of ones.
Wow.
8331s, 8341s, 8351s. They
I get the
just came
numbers
out with the
confused. Yeah, me too.
8361s, which are bigger.
Yeah,
They're
the
just,
big guys.
they're just, and I get really good results with the Genelecs. For years, I used NHT M100s. and they stopped making those a long time ago. And I bought 10 pairs so that I'd have parts.
Isn't it amazing that you could do that kind of stuff? It's
but now, I finally have decided that I need to find. Yeah, and
what do you do with all the parts?
I don't know. I don't want to. I just can't let them go.
No, don't let them go.
It's hard to let any gear go.
And
I have 6 Complexes because I'm obsessed with them the 8 years.
Complexes?
Yeah, and I've just collected them over the last 20 years. And I just have them in a closet in my house.
Oh,
and I
you have a complex.
No, I use like 3 of them. I have a complex is right. No, but I have like 3 of them that I use, but the spare ones are just...
Oh, you have to have spares.
Yeah, so...
Yeah,
but
you'll
the
never
same
get
thing.
those again.
But-
Right.
No, they really are hard to find.
Yes, they are.
But so mixing, if you're mixing a song, you'll stay on one set of monitors. You
Yeah.
won't switch around.
No.
Too confusing, or
Wow. The Genelex I can run at a very low level. So I start at a relatively loud level. And then the last set of revisions I do in a mix are at very low level, so I can check. I mean, at a low level, if I can still hear the bass guitar
and the vocal,
then I'm happy with that. So the Genelec, and then I use this Dangerous Music system. There's a monitor SR that, or the monitor ST is the stereo little switcher.
Oh, it's the big
With
knob.
with the knob.
Right,
That
right.
thing is great. So there's a dim, and so I
And
can
a
get it
mono
really
and
quiet.
right.
And the Genelecs carry really well at low levels.
Right.
So yeah, I just use one set of monitors.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you do vocal options, or you just do a mix and go and
No.
say this is where it should live?
Yeah, I did after all the approvals and after printing versions for mastering, which I take off the compression off the stereo bus for that. After that, it took a couple weeks before I went and printed all the stems. And I'll do a stem print offline just using my template.
Gotcha.
And so then I load that up and then send that to them.
When you take the compressor off the bus, how much change? Are you hitting it hard? Like, does it change? The
Depends.
balances change?
It depends. Yeah, well, yeah, it does usually get a little quieter because I'm using the maximizer usually on the isotope, the ozone.
Right.
The maximizer will boost it so that it's an exciting listen for the client. And then I'll strip that off.
Right.
And then the level will drop. One thing I've learned recently about mixing, which is a big revelation, is with the really dense mixes, people send me sessions that have 100 tracks. And by the time you bring everything up, you're slamming your stereo.
Yeah.
So I start now at -30 on all the initial tracks. Before I load in my template,
Right.
everything comes down to -30. Then I put the tracks into my template, and then I start mixing and moving. Eventually, the everything kind of creeps up again,
Right.
but it gets up to about -20.
Right.
I find that if I start that low, that when I'm finished with the mix, I have a lot of headroom still.
that's great.
And there's a lot of depth in the mix and a lot of air. It's changed how these mixes turn out because there's a bit of claustrophobia when you have so many tracks and you're trying to fit it all into this
And you're slamming
small,
the bus. It's
it
really...
doesn't sound that good.
Yeah, no, it does
And you're
not.
fighting it, constantly fighting it. So now I just start much lower. And in fact, I learned from my friend at Isotope, Jonathan Weiner, that you are not losing that much resolution when you bring down your tracks that much because there's so much resolution to begin with that you can lose half of it and still have a lot. So I'm not afraid to bring.
Right.
And honestly, the mixes have really stepped up a great amount just with that one little thing. So hopefully you people out there will give that a try.
Who masters your stuff?
I use a couple different people for mastering, and the Taylor Hawkins record was done by Howie Weinberg, who I've had a relationship with for a long time.
We know him from
New
Sterling.
York.
Oh, I bet you do. He's a character, isn't
He
he?
sure is.
Yeah. And then I use a fellow in Seattle whose name is Steve Turnage, and he's just like a one-man show there. He's written books on mastering for Hal Leonard, and so he's just, I like him because he's very hands-on, and we get on a kind of a Skype call where, and I'm not sure the program that he uses, Zoom or something like that, where we can hear the in real time what he's doing with segues and sonically. So we get on the phone call that way.
So
and
do you
finish the
choose
records.
intentionally not to go to mastering?
No, it's just that I'm in Oregon.
Right.
And,
Yeah, it's
you know,
a little bit of a trek.
and a lot of times people don't want to pay for it either.
Right.
I'll go if there's a budget for it.
Right.
But I can honestly say I trust the work that Howie and Steve do. So
How do you pick them for a session? Like, is there a certain thing that
Style?
Steve does that Howie doesn't, or
Yeah.
vice versa?
the harder music, I'll use Howie.
Right. Which makes
Yeah.
sense because he's been slamming,
Of course, right?
forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have to do revisions anyway. Just you get back something that you've got approval on a mix, and you got the guitars and the vocals at a certain level. You get the mastering back, and it's all the guitars are way louder. So you have to do some revisions and do the revision in your system, and then send them a revised mix with the guitars down, so that if they use the same settings, it'll balance out. It's a tedious work.
Yeah.
To get it right.
And it's a dance. It's a gentle dance. You really have to really try things. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mentors, like
Oh, the
like just when coming up through the years, like
Okay.
people who were important to you.
Yeah.
Or,
I'd have to say my mentors. There's a bunch of them, but Matt Wallace.
Oh, I love him.
Oh God,
He's such a nice guy.
He's a nice guy, and he was so giving, and he still is so giving today. He was the one who I couldn't understand what he was doing because I was such a beginner. But he said, you wanted me to play the drums? Okay, I'm going to take the kick drum and I'm going to put it on 2 chairs and I'm going to hit it with a mallet, and the snare drum over here. And he was playing a drum kit with 2 mallets. And, it's like, well, that's not how you're supposed to do it, right?
Right.
But there was no rules with him.
Right.
And he was also reamping snares in the in echo chambers. And I learned so much from him, and especially about how to be a good hang in the studio too, right? You want to have this, you want to work with Matt because he's just a good person. Another really important mentor would be Alan Meyerson, who I assisted at Larrabee, and we did some Spandau ballet and orchestral maneuvers in the dark. But he's now Hans Zimmer's right-hand man, and he does these huge film gigs, and he's just a master at what he does. But he, for more than just technical help, he really saved me.
Right.
When I was in a tough spot. And so I give him a lot of credit for me being here today. And God, there are so many more. Right. Susan Rogers is an inspiration just because, and there were women that I used to watch go in and out of a studio in San Francisco before I ever started recording. There, Maureen Droney and Leslie Ann Jones.
Oh, I know. Leslie Ann Jones is...
Right?
Yeah.
And so I used to watch them going in and out of I was stalking them basically in the parking lot across the street. And my friend was the parking lot attendant. I'm like, who are those people? Because we were watching the stars go in and out of the Automat in San Francisco.
Oh, that's cool.
And I, who are those women? Who are they? And he said, well, they're the engineers. I was like, oh, well, that's what I want to do, right? So that's those people I have to give so much credit. And later on, when I had my own all-girl band, we hired Maureen Droney to mix one of our songs because she was my hero, She was all of our heroes.
What was the band called?
It was called Revolver.
Nice.
And, we were pretty... we weren't that good.
Well, whatever.
But you were having fun.
Yeah, you were having fun.
Yeah, and I learned a lot, and we scratched together $100 to pay her to mix our.
Oh, that's so
this
good.
This is a long time ago, but yeah. So those are the heroes that they are still huge heroes in my book. We could go on and on. Huh?
We could.
This
And by
could
the
have
way,
gone on for a
this
while.
is the vibe of what we do. So you're welcome to come back whenever you
anytime.
want. If you're in New
Come
York,
back anytime.
we would love to
Yeah,
have you.
there's so much more to
I
talk
know.
This
about.
is tip of the iceberg.
I mean, it really, really
Yes.
is.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great.
I'm so
Thank you
glad to
so
meet
much,
you.
Sylvia.
Me and Stewie want to thank all you Gear Clubbers for listening to this crazy podcast we do. If you can, leave a review on iTunes. It really makes a difference. And don't be shy. We love hearing from you guys on the social media at Gear Club Podcast. Don't forget to go to gearclubpodcast.com for Spotify playlists, links and photos for the episodes, and my favorite hot sauce of the month.